Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Kitty Talks. This week we are going to be talking about energy. Everything is energy, and I wanted to just go into this in a little bit more detail. So if you listen to the podcast, you're a regular on the podcast, you know that my mission is to inspire a generation of change makers to follow their passion and purpose and make a difference on the planet. Now, when we have a purpose, we have meaning and fulfillment in our lives. And actually what happens is we vibrate at a higher energy level. So this might sound a bit odd, but think about it. When you're happy, when you're doing the things that bring you joy, when you're happy, when you're excited, you are literally vibrating at a higher energetic level. So let's talk about energy. Everything is energy. I truly believe that everything is energetic and everything is energy. And for me, I truly believe what happens is we come into this world, some of us more conscious than others. I know for me, I wasn't conscious till the age of 28. I was very much living on a loop, on a pattern. I was living into my addictive tendencies. And I always thought that there should be more to life, but I didn't know what that was. And at 28, I had a very big spiritual awakening. Some of you know my story, will know what happened. I won't go into that in this podcast, but if you're interested in that, you can go and listen to How I Cured My Depression. That's the podcast where I talk about my spiritual awakening. But what happens when you then become conscious is you start to do work on yourself. You start to understand that you have a purpose, you have a way forward, that you don't necessarily have to live into your default future. You can create your future. And when we start to free up our energy in our body, so when we start to do work on ourselves, when we start to let go of the things that we're holding on to, we start to basically increase our energy field. So the more work we do, the more we free up our stuck energy. So I will give you an example of this, which is really poignant actually. And it's something I learned and I saw firsthand when my mum was very ill. When we are depressed or anxious, those emotions are very low level emotions. You are literally at the bottom of the emotional vibrational scale. And for those of you who've done the Do Your Dharma course, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. But when you're anxious, you're fearful and you're depressed or you're angry, you're low level vibe, you know. And when we don't process our emotions, we hold on to them. And so it's very important that we understand that we're energetic beings and that we should be connected to our heart and that energy should flow through us, emotions should flow through us. We should feel them, but we should let them go. But what I would say, probably, goodness, I'd go as far to say as like 90% of the population are doing at the moment is they don't necessarily understand that when you don't deal with your emotions, when you push your emotions away, when you pretend that you've lost your mum and you don't grieve for her, you just block it off, you block off your heart, you block off your emotions, that energy goes somewhere and it goes inside your body and it becomes stuck. Now, Chinese medicine very much talks about this process. You know, they talk about how we have qi and they have practices, daily practices, things like Qigong, Kung Fu, Tai Chi, which are daily practices to move your energy through your body. And when you're moving your energy through your body, what you're doing is you're clearing out those blockages so you don't have the problems later on, the illness. Because what can happen is when you don't deal with your emotions, you can store your emotions in your body and it effectively will it will make you heavier. It will make you heavier energetically. And one thing I saw, which was very fascinating, when my mum was very ill, and it really kind of confirmed everything I believed about energy. She was staying with us and we were getting her to do some energy work, and, you know, she would feel better after doing the energy work. But one day she had a Reiki treatment, and the Reiki treatment, I think, actually moved her stuck energy. When you do Reiki, you channel fresh energy into your body, and then that moves the stuck energy out of your body. Now, depending on where you are in your process, if you're a kind of functioning human being and you're healthy, this can be really good for you. But if you're very, very depressed, what happened in her case is actually kind of opened a bit of a Pandora's box. And I watched my husband. He's very good with energy work, and he channeled the stuck energy that she had in her meridians. He channeled it into her meridians, and then enabled him to help her release the emotion that she had been holding on to. But he actually did it through his own body, which meant that he was feeling and channeling and feeling her emotions as they left her body. So he was feeling the sadness and the grief that she actually hadn't dealt with, because she lost her parents when she was probably a similar age to me, but she'd never had a chance to deal with it. She was dealing with a young baby. So it's quite amazing when we understand the concept of energy, how it should influence and impact our lives. So for anyone listening to this podcast and you have an interest in energy, it's really important the energy we have in our own homes as well. So obviously we have control over our bodies and what we put into our bodies. So things, the rise of veganism is so prominent now. And that's because obviously when you eat vegetables, you're eating live energy. When you're eating meat, you're eating dead energy. It's the sort of simplest way to look at it. And so, personally, our diet has switched so much more. We're still eating meat, but we're eating a lot less of it. And we're eating grass-fed meat, so we know what's been going on with the cows. But yes, the more you look after your energy, the more you protect your energy, the more you are on your spiritual journey and your spiritual path, you will free up your stuck energy by doing the work. And the more you follow your bliss, the more you do the things that you're passionate about, you actually put yourself in a higher vibrational state. So let's look at other areas that you can look at your energy. One thing that I'm also really passionate about is the energy of my house. And for those of you who follow me, that I had some quite interesting experiences. I've been dowsing the properties I live in for years, actually, probably for about the last 5 years. And for those of you who don't know what dowsing is, think about dowsing for water. They used to use rods, and they used to tune in to where the water was on the earth. And dowsing rods can also be used to tune in to see where electricity is in your house, or where there is energy like negative or positive vortexes that shouldn't be in your house. So if you think about what's happening nowadays, we have a huge amount of Wi-Fi everywhere, electromagnetic fields. So again, I was going to do another episode on how you can reduce your exposure to electromagnetic fields. So reduce your exposure to Wi-Fi. So we turn off our Wi-Fi every day when we're not using it. So we don't sleep with it on. We don't have our phones in our bedrooms. But what dowsing can do is basically, what dowsing can do is it can also help you make sure your energy in your house is very high vibration. So imagine your house is built on top of a ley line, or imagine there's an electricity line that goes through your house. You would never see it. You can't see it, but you might be able to sense it. So what dowsing does is it recorrects the energy field within your house. So if you have got something like an electricity line running through your house, it'd be very easy for somebody who's trained in dowsing to use their rods to stop that energy flowing through the house. Now, if you imagine if you were sleeping on top of electricity, imagine how that would impact your body. So just to give you a couple of examples of this where I've really noticed it, because I think the more and more sensitive to energy we get, the more and more we can feel it. So when we're unconscious, this would not even be something that we could grasp. But the more conscious we get, the more we look after our bodies, the more we look after our energy fields, the more we become sensitive to negative energy. So when we first moved into our house, for those of you who know, we have a barn in Chichester, 200-year-old barn, absolutely beautiful. Bit of a money pit, if I'm honest. Didn't realise quite how much of a money pit it would be, but it's stunning to look at and it's amazing to live in, and there's so much history here. But when we first moved in, obviously the house had not been doused, and both my husband and I are very sensitive to energy. And the first weekend we lived in the house, I did not sleep, like literally at all. And I knew I was sleeping on top of something. I knew that there was something wrong with where I was sleeping, because in our previous house it had been doused and I sort of slept like a baby. And the other thing that we had going on with this house was my dog, so I have two dogs, one called Lola and one called Buddy. Buddy, the boy, is actually more sensitive than the girl, would you believe? And he could not settle. Like, he'd never slept in another house before. He was always brought up in our Worthing house. And so when we moved, every night he used to scratch and howl, and you put him to bed and he'd be fine for a couple of hours, and then suddenly you'd hear him scratching, 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 and literally, ow, he'd be howling and howling. And of course, I'd wake up. It'd usually be about midnight. And this poor dog, you'd come downstairs and this poor dog looked absolutely petrified, and he was all worked up, and he'd open the door and he'd run around the house like a lunatic, absolute lunatic. And then you'd calm him down, and then he wouldn't want to go back into his room. It's very strange, really weird, and I couldn't quite work out what was going on. But he kept on doing it, and I couldn't understand. He'd never behaved badly before. He'd always been such a good dog. And I contacted a friend of mine, a lady called Sylvia Morgan, and we'll put her details in the show notes because she's amazing if you're interested in this type of work. And I contacted her and asked her to do the dowsing on the house. And she did, and she found quite a lot of interesting things, two of which was a ghost. So she tuned in and she found two ghosts were living in the property that we were living in. And of course, it made total sense. The ghosts were the ones that were disturbing the dog. And Sylvia got rid of the ghosts. Apparently, there was one gentleman who was sort of in his 70s who left quite easily. So quite often with spirits, they can get trapped. They can get trapped in this dimension rather than crossing over because they maybe haven't completed anything. But he left very, very easy. But there was a girl, and she was a young girl. She was a rider, and she didn't want to leave. And so she kept hiding as a ghost. So every time we thought we got rid of her, what would happen is we'd be going to bed and we'd think, oh, God, we're going to get a great night's sleep, obviously, because the ghosts are gone. And the dog would just go completely and utterly nuts. And we discovered that the ghost kept coming back. So this might sound weird, but you could actually feel her, like this sort of cold presence in the house. Very, very odd. So we had to work for about a week to actually get the ghost to leave, which was just incredible. And we finally knew we got rid of her because the dog stopped going completely nuts every night and we got a decent night's sleep. But the other thing that Sylvia did with energy was she can increase the energy of the house. So if you imagine, if you're living in a very high vibrational property or house, you won't get sick. You are less likely to be ill. It's high level vibrational energy is just very supportive when you're trying to do anything, really. So Sylvia can close all of the negative vortexes. Negative vortexes are where energy, if you imagine like energy going down a plug hole, if you imagine a plug hole where the water spins, it sucks the water out of the plug hole. A bit like that with a negative vortex where energy goes, it spins, and it pulls the energy out of the room. So obviously you don't want those. But you can also get things called positive vortexes as well. So positive vortexes are things that you would want to sit in while you were podcasting or you were manifesting or you were writing your journal because you'd get the positive energy from those. But what she discovered in our bedroom was the fact that we had some type of electricity line running through our bed, which meant that the electricity was literally disturbing my body. So I could not sleep. And twice in my life, I've had to call Sylvia because I've been in hotel rooms or I've been abroad and I've been sleeping in beds and I don't sleep. And I know it's to do with the energy. So Gran Canaria this year, we were hired an Airbnb. And again, first night, tossed and turned, did not sleep. It's like having had too much caffeine would be the way I would describe it. You know that you're sleeping on something energetically wrong when you feel a bit wired would be the way I would describe it. And so when I contacted Sylvia, she discovered that I was literally, my husband and I were sleeping with two negative vortexes on our pillows. So there's no way we were going to get a decent night's sleep. And then I've had it another time where I was in Italy with my sister. And again, the house was beautiful we were staying in. It looks absolutely gorgeous. But of course, no one thinks to actually look at the energy of a place. And so they hadn't sorted out the energy of the place. And consequently, it meant I had a really, really bad night's sleep. So with the property that I own, I always make sure that I am dousing the property to make sure that the guests or the people who live in the property they love the house. You know, they want to stay there longer because it can really impact and influence people who are living and staying in a house. So just a few points about energy. Everything is energy. We are energy. Plants are energy. Everything is energetic. So next time you're thinking about what you're going to eat, think about what the type of energy is that you are putting into your body. Next time you think about where you're going to go for a walk, think about what the energy is like. So nature is fantastic because obviously that will really help clean and cleanse our energy because it has a very strong energy field. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you got any crazy energy stories where you have done energy work and maybe you freed up some stuck energy and something happened? Or tell me your stories. I'd love to hear from you guys about what you understand energy to be and what you got from this podcast. Sometimes it's going to be a lonely journey when you're podcasting because you're talking to yourself, basically. So it would be fantastic if you guys would give me some feedback. Let me know you're listening to the podcast. Let me know who you want me to interview. Let me know what you want me to talk about. I'm going to do another podcast on electromagnetic fields and how we can reduce our exposure to them. So watch out for that one. But I just want to thank you all for being listeners of Kitty Talks. It always amazes me when people message me and text me and say that they're listening because I just love it. You know, I love the feedback. I love you guys saying what you get out of the podcasts. So please don't hesitate to come follow me on Instagram, Kitty_talks. We have a Facebook community, which is a free Facebook community, which you can join. Create a Life You Love on Facebook. And yes, please do tag me in your pictures when you are listening to the podcast. I will see you again with another amazing guest next week. Bye-bye. This podcast was sponsored by my Do Your Dharma course. Create a life so good that you pinch yourself. This 8-week online course demystifies Dharma and shows you how to tune in to why you're really here. Go to www.kittytalks.com/do your Dharma.